Where we're talking about leadership and what do you need to know to be a leader. So hopefully we'll have some good ideas for you. And by the end of the session, maybe you'll have a few things to take back to your chapter. So next slide, please, Wayne. There we go. So first of all, I want to thank you all. We all really understand the importance of the support groups, and that's why we're actually volunteering. This is why we're doing things. We want our chapter to thrive. We want the support groups to be successful. We know that the support groups can transform people's lives. We've seen it over and over again. I call them little miracles that people have made relations with their family. They reconnected with their family. They found love again. They stopped going to the hospital. They found meaning in life. But the truth is, none of it would happen without you all. You all do all the hard work. You find the meeting places, you get the word out, you do the facilitating, all that makes the groups possible. So I just want to thank you for that. And I'm sure Carla and Jill and the entire DBSA group or organization does too. So next slide, please. So some of the learning objectives here, hopefully by the end of the session, we might be able to talk about the fiduciary responsibilities, explain the affiliation arrangement, and name a couple of resources for assistance for local leaders. Okay. So next slide. So let's go on the next slide after that.
Okay.
So we're going to talk a little bit about governance. I think there's probably going to be some fancy terms here, but it's just common sense. Everything we're going to be talking about is common sense, and somebody's put fancy terms on them. But governance is one of the things we want to talk about. And basically, it's just a system by which an organization is controlled and operates, the mechanisms by which it and its people are held accountable. So it's just the business end of what you do. So the chapters, the support groups, somebody's got to govern it. Somebody has to take up leadership and kind of take control of the business end of the organization. So that's what governance is all about: management rules and decision-making, accountability, that sort of thing. So next slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about the responsibilities of a board of directors. Probably a lot of you sitting on your local board of directors. So the first one is mission. For example, DBSA's mission, the national mission, is DBSA provides hope, help, support, and education to improve the lives of people who have mood disorders. And as a board member, it's your responsibility to make sure that your chapter is fulfilling its mission. Sometimes it's an easy decision to make as to whether or not you are. And sometimes it's kind of a difficult call. I'll just make up an example here. Suppose Michael Pollock came to the DBSA national group and said he wanted to adopt puppies and give them to children. Well, that is to me easily a call that that is not within the scope of the mission of DBSA, and I would definitely vote no for that proposal. But if he came to the board and says, I want to train support animals and give them to veterans who are having mental health issues. Well, that's a great idea, and it fits within the mission, hope, help, support, education. But my question to him would be, is it core to what we do? Is it the most important thing that we do? And could we spend our money better doing something else? And I would think that would be the case. And again, I would have to vote no for that proposal, because I think it would take us away from our core responsibilities. The second thing is the vision. DBSA's vision is the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance envisions wellness for people living with mood disorders. And so when people speak about vision, they're speaking about the future. And it's one of the board's responsibilities to envision the future. For example, what new chapters do you want to create? Do you want to focus on a minority, perhaps different minorities or different neighborhoods, or do you want to create a speakers program, or do you want to do more advocacy? Those are things that the board gets to help shape. And to me, that's the most exciting thing about being on the board is planning for what the future holds for us and kind of managing that. The third thing is monitoring programs and services. It's the board's responsibility to make this, again, to make sure that we're spending our money wisely. And are we spending our time and treasure wisely? And if we're have a program that's not very successful, is there something else that we should be doing? So if we have a speakers program that nobody's attending, do we want to continue having that speakers program, for example? Is there something better that we could do? Maybe advocacy that we could be spending more time on, or vice versa. It's just what our call is as a board member. Protect the assets and provide financial oversight. This is extremely important. If something smells rotten in your organization, you'll usually find a dead fish right here. And board oversight is extremely critical. It's important as a board member to insist that at a quarterly board meeting that the balance sheet and income statement be presented. And it's important that the treasurer go through that and explain how the the assets of the organization are holding up and how the money's being spent. If as a board member you have a suspicion that the money's not being spent wisely or allocated wisely, you have every right in the world to insist on seeing documents like bank statements to verify that those monies are being spent wisely. And finally, be very careful regarding timing. A person who's trying to cheat an organization will normally do a lot of stall tactics. They will forget to bring the statements, or they'll bring them next time, or they can't find them, or they can't explain why, but they'll have an explanation next time. Do not let somebody that you suspect of not being honest with the funds that you've entrusted them to spend a lot of delay you too much, because that will create problems down the road. Might as well solve the problem right now, or hopefully prove that everything's just fine, and that your suspicions were unfounded. That would be the best outcome, wouldn't it? The next step is to ensure the legal and ethical integrity of the organization. there's certain things that we need to do as an organization to stay within compliance of state regulations and national regulations. And it's our responsibility also to make sure that we are, an organization that, has standards and ethics, and we do meet our mission and our vision, um, and with integrity. Um, and finally, it's our responsibility to enhance the organization's public standing. Um, we want to let professionals know, the doctors and the therapists know that we're here. We want to, let family members, friends know that what good work DBSA does. Hopefully, you may have a person or two that could help financially support the organization. Uh, Hopefully, maybe you can get the word out by contacting the newspapers or television news organizations with stories. So there's a lot of responsibilities here, but again, like I said, there may be, big words, but it's all common sense. This is all common sense. So next slide, please. There we go. So in conducting a board meeting, I recommend that you use Robert's rules, but a very simplified version of Robert's rules. There should be documents available to you, and I do have a document there available on Robert's rules, and it just very simply explains the rules and when to make a motion and when to second and when to have a discussion over the motion. And if you can make a copy of that and just distribute it to everybody at the board meeting, that will help facilitate the organization or the board meeting itself. A lot of people either do it without Robert's rules, and there's always some confusion, or with a very primitive understanding of what it is. So hopefully that'll be some help. Guidelines. I was chairman of DBSA's board of directors. About 3 years ago, we were facing some difficulties, and we had to bring that issue up before the board. And there were very impassioned people on both sides of the issue. There was a lot of hanging on the decisions that we were making. It was a big possibility that if we made one decision, we would lose a large source of funding. So I knew that there was every possibility that the board meeting could get out of control, and there'd be a lot of angry words possibly spread between the board members. So the thing I did right before we had that item came up is I read the support group guidelines, and they really helped. One person speaks at a time, respecting kindness, show respect. Everyone has an opportunity to speak. All of those guidelines are we call them support group guidelines, but they're really guidelines for human behavior. They're guidelines on how we interact with each other. If Aunt Debbie, the Democrat, and Uncle Ron, the Republican, come to your Thanksgiving dinner, maybe after you say grace, you could repeat some of the guidelines, and maybe you'll have a more pleasant Thanksgiving dinner. So, we're familiar with the guidelines. Don't be hesitant to gently remind somebody that we abide by those guidelines, and speak up. Your opinion is valuable, especially if you're new. we may have some hesitancy to share our opinion, but it's important that if you have a point of view, it's based on your experience in life and your experience with the groups and the chapters, and it's important to speak out. And it's especially important to speak out if you're the only voice. If all the other people on the board are leaning one way, expressing your opinion is very valuable to the board's decision at the end. Vote your conscience. I've seen in board meetings, some people just kind of vote along to get along. For some reason, there's always a unanimous decision, and based on the probably the prevailing opinion of a few of the board members. Again, if you have an opinion and you feel strongly about it, vote your conscience. Even if you're the only person that's voting that decision, it's really, I think, very important to the health of the organization and the health of the board that interaction take place. You are not a rubber stamp. You do not, it's not your job to kind of give a green light to the president of the organization. So vote your conscience, speak up. Your opinion is valuable. But once you've done that, you want to respect the board's decisions and support them publicly. One of the most damaging things you can do as a leader is go against publicly, go against what the board decides by, pulling people over and kind of gossiping about, I'm really unhappy with this or that, and I wish they'd never done that. I don't know why they did that. You're a representative of the board of directors, and it's your responsibility to express those, whatever the board decides. It's your responsibility to back the board up. So next slide, please. So there's some important documents involved in being a chapter. Again, this is the business end of it. This is the governance end of it. Articles of incorporation are basically the application and the with either the state of Illinois, if you're following through the DBSA Nationals organization, or you can actually become a 501c3 on your own and do it in your own state. And this is what makes you a legitimate organization, a legitimate nonprofit. So it's extremely important to have articles of incorporation filed with the state, either Illinois or your own state. The EIN number is a number that you'll receive after you're incorporated. It is the unique identifier for your organization. It's like your social security number. There's nobody else is going to have your EIN number. It's your social security number for an organization. And it's extremely important to have that EIN number. A lot of business decisions need to have a EIN number. If you file your annual report with the state government, you have to have your EIN number. If you're looking for a charitable donation from an organization, frequently they will ask for your EIN number. So they're a really important document to have and to keep safe. The bylaws are also extremely important, and you'll be a 501c3 either through DBSA or through your chapter. I recommend strongly that you put all these documents in a binder, the secretary safeguard, and bring these documents to a meetings. And also go ahead and make an extra copy for the president and treasurer. They may need them, and it's always safe to have extra copies in case something happens to the original. Let's go on the next slide. So articles of incorporation are the first step to creating a DBSA chapter. This is where you actually get your organizational corporate name. A registered agent, you need to name a registered agent, which is a person who will correspond with the state. And then you need to have a minimum of 3 individuals to serve on the board of directors. And you need to express the purpose of your corporation, which would be pretty much, your mission statement, right? Frequently, it can be done online. And again, Illinois incorporates incorporations that does all this work for you through the DBSA in the Illinois state. So we can go to the next slide. And again, I talked a little about the EIN number, but it's just important to have. It's required to do business. If you want to be an exempt, if you don't want to pay sales tax, or you can be exempt from sales tax if you present your EIN number. And to accept donations, you need it. And if you want to open a checking account or a savings account, the bank is going to ask you for that information. So next slide. So the bylaws are extremely important. And again, it's a common sense document. It's got some mumbo jumbo in it, but it really is important. It spells out the purpose of your organization. It spells out your fiduciary responsibilities, and we'll cover that in a little bit. It spells out the committees that you will be organizing, either standing committees like finance or ad hoc committees in case you need a special situation and you need to call a committee together. And it spells out the meetings, the quorum, the people you need for a quorum, the conduct of the meeting, the voting of the meetings. I'll give you an example. I was on the board of directors for a neighborhood association. So, and we were at a picnic, neighborhood picnic, and some of the board members came up and said, "Hey, look, we've got a quorum. Let's go ahead and have a quick meeting so we can get that equipment that we want." And I had to remind them that we couldn't do that because the bylaws spell out that we need to give notification to all the board members a week prior to the meeting. So it was a safeguard because there were a lot of members that were not at that picnic, and it would have been a bit of disaster when later on down the line. So the bylaws are protection, and they are your rule book. So it's important to know a little bit about them. Bring them to the any of the board meetings if there's a question on how you operate. Somebody says, "Well, do we have to have a quorum?" You can look in the bylaws and pick up all that information. So next slide, please. So just basically, your bylaws will contain the name of the corporation, whether it's a profit or nonprofit, what it takes to be a board member, the qualifications, what it takes to be an officer. If there's term limits for the board, what those term limits are. There's an annual membership schedule if you need it, indemnification clause, dissolution instructions. So if you choose to dissolve the chapter, the bylaws will spell out exactly how you go about doing that. DBSA's chapter support team has a template of bylaws for you. So, and they can help you get off to a good start. And it's a lot quicker than starting from scratch, and it's a lot easier too. So next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit about fiduciary responsibility. And why do you need to know about fiduciary responsibilities? So there, let's go to the next slide. So again, we're going to throw around a couple of terms, but basically all of this is common. So a fiduciary is a person who stands in a special relation of trust, confidence, and responsibility in hers or his obligation. So as a
You're on
Okay.
mute.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Good. So you have a fiduciary trust to the organization. That means that you have a responsibility to make sure that the organization is fulfilling its mission and vision, and that the programs are being properly managed and the money's being managed properly, that sort of thing. So there's three different fiduciary duties: a duty of care, a duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience. Before we go to the next slide, though, I just want to say that the fiduciary duty requires board members to be objective, to be unselfish, to be responsible, honest, trustworthy, efficient. Board members are stewards of the public trust and must always act for the good of the organization rather than for the benefit of themselves. Let's go to the next slide. So duty of care. Duty of care means that a board of directors must give the same care and concern to their board of directors as any prudent or ordinary person would, as you would care for your own family, as you would care for your own well-being. Means that board members should actively participate in board meetings and on committees. Means they should actively be working with other board members to advance the organization's mission and vision and goals. They can fulfill responsibilities by overseeing and monitoring the nonprofit activities. Board members should be able to read and understand financial reports and be willing to question the expenditures and examine variances. They should also be responsible, or they can also be responsible for strategic planning, which is, we were talking about vision earlier, and achieving nonprofit short and long-term goals. So you want to read and understand the vision and mission, the bylaws. You want to attend the group, the meetings for the board and committee, be informed and exercise the same care as you would for your own family or your own workplace. So next slide. Thank you. Duty of loyalty means that board of directors must place their interests of the organization ahead of their own interests at all times. Duty of loyalty means publicly disclosing any conflict of interest and not using board service as a means for personal or commercial gain. So if your chapter was going to print, 5,000 flyers for something, and a board member says, well, my cousin Charlie does those, and I think we can get it for a discount. Well, there's a personal interest there, and he should not be doing that, because there may be a conflict of interest. So just put the organization's objectives ahead of your own self-interest. Establish and follow written policies. Avoid entering into business relationships between board members and the organization. So let's go to the next slide. And the final one is duty of obedience. Excuse me. That means understanding and complying with governance, with the governing documents, the bylaws, for example. Know and comply with state and federal laws governing nonprofit organizations, including registering and reporting requirements. Gratefully, Carla and Jill, DBSA National Chapter Support Organization, does a lot of this work and really helps us out a lot. So we don't have to worry about a whole lot, but we do, need to be responsible. Duty of obedience means that board members must make sure that the nonprofit is abiding by all the laws and regulations and doesn't engage in illegal or unauthorized activities. Duty of obedience also means that the board of directors must carry out the organization's mission in accordance with the purpose they stated in getting qualified as a nonprofit organization. So again, it all makes it common sense stuff, and it all kind of ties in together with what we were talking about earlier in the conversation. So let's go to the next slide. So DBSA and national and DBSA chapters, are they the same organization? And the answer is yes, and the answer is no. The answer is no, because your chapter is an independent 501c3. So you are your own nonprofit. But the answer is yes, because you have an affiliation agreement with DBSA National. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about the affiliation agreement. So next slide, please. The purpose of an affiliation agreement is to set forth procedures and establishing a contractual relationship between DBSA National and the chapter or state organization about its responsibilities and liabilities of both parties. A chapter affiliation agreement establishes the right of the chapter to use the parent organization name and receive specified assistance in exchange for agreeing to certain standards of conduct, oversight, and formal requirements. Basically, if you think of franchises, that is very similar to an affiliation agreement. So if you can think of McDonald's, at McDonald's, there's this big corporate organization, but the restaurants in your town are run by small business people who have an affiliation agreement or a franchise agreement for in this case, with the national organization. And they both kind of help each other out. They both have requirements and obligations and rules that they follow. And both parties benefit greatly because of the affiliation. So let's go to the next slide. And we're doing okay on time. We're getting close, aren't we? So the purpose of let's see here. So obligations of DBSA National, refer members of the public to the chapter, distribute designated copies of literature, maintain chapter relationships, management relations with the chapters, have facilitator training, offer assistance to the chapter and state organizations. On obligations of the chapter, offer at least one peer-led support group, follow the guidelines, have one education session per year. If you are using DBSA's National Group Exemption, the chapter state organization needs to file through the DBSA National Chapter for their fiscal year to file again in January with the state of Illinois. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, next slide. So again, you renew if you're doing it through the chapter relations, you want to renew it. If you're a state organization, December 31. If you're a chapter January 31. And affiliation agreement will be sent out annually. Let's go on the next slide, please. So as a new leader, here's some resources. Again, they're available in the chapter management section of DBSA. That is an excellent place to find documents and interact from different chapters. DBSA Boulder frequently puts different information out that you can share. There's a weekly chapter leadership connection meeting. That's every Wednesday from 12 to 1. There's also a monthly topical chapter chat, and that's evenings, Mondays 6 to 7, or the last Wednesday 12 to 1. All that information Carla and Jill can kind of bring you up to date on. So check with them and find out what the schedules for theirs are. And network with each other. I can't tell you how valuable the information and advice I've gotten from DBSA National, the Washington, D.C. group, DBSA Boston, and Boulder, Colorado, the state, Tennessee, Daisy Gavis at the Tennessee, the New Jersey state organization. They've all been immensely important to how we shaped our Louisville chapter. So a nice way to be able to do that is, now that we're doing Zoom meetings, maybe you could reach out to a chapter leader and ask to sit in on one of their support group meetings. And then maybe you can kind of chat with them afterwards, or at least have some correspondence with them. So reach out to each other. There's, I guess, maybe 10 or 12 of us here. Reach out, make connections. It's really important. I think that's it. Like, what's the last slide? Questions, answers. So Wayne, do we have any questions to start off with?
Yeah, we have we have a couple questions. Let me read them to
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
Where will the abbreviated Robert's rules be made available? Is there a simpler version of Robert's rules that is recommended?
Well, there's several versions. Just the one that I put in the documents, and I'll need to talk to Carla. I don't know where she's posting those for each of the presentations. So we'll need to talk to Carla or Jill and find out where they're posted.
Is the template provided by DBSA National?
The bylaws template?
I
Yes.
believe so.
Yes, that template is provided by DBSA National. Again, you can give Jill or Carla a call, and they will happily work through it with you. In fact, our Louisville chapter right now is working with them on revising our bylaws. So they've been very, very, very helpful in helping us do that.
Okay, thank you. We have one more question.
Sure.
Most of this relates to in-person board meetings. What about Zoom meetings?
Oh, well, in my mind, it's kind of the same thing. It's kind of like support group meetings, Zoom meetings, and in-person meetings. As long as we're support group meetings, if we're following the guidelines and we respect each other, and we respect the facilitator, there's not a whole lot of difference in my mind between the two. And I think the same thing in my mind goes for board meetings also. Right now, we at DBSA Louisville have been having our board meetings virtual for the past, I guess, 18 months or so. Looking forward to getting back and doing it in person again, but for right now, we're doing it all on Zoom.
So far, that's all of the questions in the chat.
Okay. We can give one more minute. Anybody want to jump in and type anything in there?
Oh, wait, hold on a moment.
Where do you store all those documents and items, Roger? Well, we were just talking about that in our board meeting, weren't we, Roger? I believe that Google has a service that you can take advantage of. And here's a network opportunity for you. Roger is our board of directors chairman, and he was just working with Anthony on that, and reach out to him, and he may be able to give you a little bit more information on that. But apparently Google has a new service that will help out a lot. Yes.
Oh,
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll just read the question so everyone knows.
Yes.
Will the slides and or meeting recording be subsequently available?
Yes. Yes, they will, along with the documents, but I don't know yet where they'll be posted. Are we there, Wayne?
Yes. Oh, wait, thank you. Hi, we're good, I guess. We're done for now with questions.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for listening. I hope it was some help. It's kind of a, governance and business are always kind of dry topics. So, but it's important to have them, have a good understanding of them. So appreciate your patience with me, and hopefully we learned a little bit together. So thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Hey,
Take
Wayne.
care.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you,
Uh-huh,
everyone.
Hey,
thank you.
Nicole.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.